Jay Powell, the Federal Reserve chairman's not going anywhere. Donald Trump knows it. Wall Street knows it. And now Jay Powell knows it. Donald Trump blinked. Another example of Trump always chickens out. He doesn't want to get rid of Jay Powell. Trump wants to get rid of the Federal Reserve. He wants to be his own chairman. He wants to completely destroy the independence of the Federal Reserve. But the American people don't want that. 80% of the American people told him so in polling. Wall Street doesn't want that. People around Donald Trump, like the Treasury Secretary, don't want that. They just want him to lower the rates, lower the rates. He'll lower the rates in his own good time. He's one of 13 people. There has to be a majority vote on the Federal Reserve. Jay Powell's not going anywhere. And I tell you why at the intersection, my new podcast. Here's a clip. All right, let's get to Trump versus Powell. Well, let me cut to the chase. Spoiler alert. Jay Powell, the central banker of the Federal Reserve, is not getting fired by Donald Trump. I've said this before. You can go back and watch old reels of me. See how old I am. Old reels. Pull up the reel-to-reel of Popok. The only thing that keeps the American economy tethered to the global economy and to America is the confidence that Wall Street and financial service companies have for Jay Powell. I don't care that Howard Lutnick, formerly of Cantor Fitzgerald, who we'll talk about next, has bashed Jay Powell, and Scott Bessent, right on cue, the Treasury Secretary, has bashed Jay Powell. Wall Street loves Jay Powell. In fact, they're trying to figure out how to hedge in case Donald Trump went through with his threats to fire Jay Powell. And what is his crime? Jay Powell's crime is that he's properly managing the monetary policy of America to keep the country from going into stagflation. Now, there's already statistics that show we are in or about to go into a recession. Disposable income, discretionary spending is down. And when that drops 60 years in a row, it means we're on the cusp of or in a recession. It may take a while for us to look back and see when the recession started. Jay Powell knows that. He sees more data than you and I forget in a day. And that group that sets rates is keeping rates right where they are. They may cut them at their meeting, but they're not going to do it in order to give free and cheap money to Donald Trump's failed economic policies and wallpaper over the fundamentals of the Trumpanomics that are just terribly misguided. There's a reason that nobody in the Trump administration calls it Trumpanomics. Reaganomics. He embraced everything that made the economy roar, but since Donald Trump's economy is roaring in reverse, it's like the MGM lion, how they used to make the MGM lion. They took a roar and did it in reverse. That's Donald Trump. That's why he doesn't call it Trumpanomics, because it's not helping the average American. It's not helping any Americans. When year over year, the consumer price index is up almost 3% year over year, that means if you were struggling before, you're going to have to go find 3% more money now for your basics. And then he sends out people on his morning talk shows like the Commerce Secretary, the laughing, giggling hyena of Howard Lutnick, who just sits there with his perma smile as a billionaire and says, "You're enjoying the lowest inflation, aren't you?" No one's enjoying inflation. That's an oxymoron, yet he brags about it. It's going to be the greatest 2 weeks in the history of trade. It's a guy that doesn't even understand trade. His companies weren't involved in trade, in setting tariffs. So when Donald Trump threatened to go after Jay Powell and now put up one of his MAGA sycophants, Representative Looney Luna out of Florida, to offer a criminal referral of Jay Powell because she doesn't like the cost overruns for the 100-year-old Federal Reserve building that ran into some structural problems and some issues related to construction costs, mainly after COVID, and has gone, as most construction projects, has gone in the red. It must be fraud. It must be a crime. Criminal referral of Jay Powell. It's because Donald Trump realizes that the United States Supreme Court, even the court that's in his back pocket, the MAGA right wing, is not going to allow him to fire the Federal Reserve Chairman without cause. How do I know that? Because they issued an opinion in May in a case involving Gwen Wilcox, the head of the head of the National Labor Relations Board that was fired by Donald Trump. And they said, you cannot fire the Federal Reserve Chairman without cause. Supreme Court warned Donald Trump. Credit rating agencies have warned Donald Trump. When Barron's lowered the credit rating for the United States, in other words, gave it a bad credit score, increasing the cost for us to borrow, they said, if you get rid of the Fed chairman, we're gonna reevaluate lowering the credit rating again. First time in 150 years we didn't enjoy a AAA rating. So Donald Trump knows he can't get rid of Jerome Powell, despite all the campaigning, despite him walking around saying he's got a letter of termination in his back pocket he's ready to send to Jay Powell. And everybody's like, oh, I'm in the same Luna said she was in the meeting with Donald Trump last week. I'm in the meeting. Jay Powell's going to get fired. No, he's not. And now Donald Trump has blinked and announced effectively that he's not firing Jay Powell unless they find fraud. So there's two major buildings that make up the Federal Reserve in Washington. They were built in the 1930s. They sit on a swamp. So the infrastructure and the foundation is sinking and has cracks and has problems. Plus the building has asbestos that has to be removed and all different things to make the building work. They really should have just tore it down. It would have been cheaper to tear it down and start all over again than get up to the $2 billion. I think it started at, a $1 billion budget, and now it's 2.5. They should have just tore it down and built a new building. Miami had the same exact, I know it because I lived here. Miami had the exact same problem with a historic courthouse in Miami-Dade on Flagler, 70 West Flagler. Gorgeous building, built, in the 1910s and filled with asbestos and sinking. And it just sat there rotting away, its innards rotting away. And they talked a lot about tearing it down and building a new building, although it's historic and all this stuff. This is even worse. Two buildings that are conjoined that have to be redesigned, shored up. And then every time Jay Powell wanted to put glass to show transparency of the Federal Reserve, Republicans on the committee about the building wanted marble, which is more expensive. COVID, logistics, supply chain, more expensive. But to the crazies on the Republican side, it must be fraud by the Federal Reserve. Why? Because that'll give them grounds to try to fire Jay Powell. I don't see them firing Jay Powell. They're pressuring him to within an inch of his life, but they're not going to take him out before May 2026 when his Federal Reserve chairmanship ends. He's got 2 more years after that to be on the Board of Governors. But we're experiencing now another taco moment. Now, the rates might come down a tick, not because he's being pressured, but because the economic data suggests that that's probably the right thing to do at this moment. To Donald Trump and to his people around him, again, they want the Federal Reserve to bail them out of their failed economic policies. And the polling says it. Not that Donald Trump appears to be swayed by polling, but the polls tell him 70% hate his immigration policies and chasing other human beings through the streets and deporting them to parts unknown without due process. Hate it. The same percentage, or even higher, 70%, believe in the independence of the Federal Reserve and that they should be free of interference from Donald Trump. So every major poll, 65% of people in the most recent poll believe that Donald Trump's economic policy is not working for them, is making it harder for them, is making them poorer, including rural and red state America, people who have voted against their interests for quite a long time. So Trump versus Powell, Trump blinks, Powell stays. Economy stays tethered to planet Earth. It's a good thing. We don't have to worry about Wall Street traders and brokers trying to hedge their bets about, hedge a Jay Powell firing that would be tied up in the courts, by the way, unless he threw in the towel and said, I don't want to fight it. There are some people out there that are suggesting that to save the independence of the Federal Reserve, Jay Powell should go. I disagree. Jay Powell should stay right where he is, where we can keep an eye on him and where he can do a great job and be the only adult in the room, apparently, that doesn't have a political bent and only has what's right for America in his mind. Welcome back. They gave me my own show. The brothers finally relented. They threw me the keys. They said, here, do a show Tuesday night at 8 p.m. on the Midas Touch Network. That was a clip. We need some loving. We're doing amazing. We got an audience that's 6 months in the making. We get 200,000 to 300,000 views of the new podcast every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. on Eastern Time on the Midas Touch Network. But we could use some love. We could use some help. Download it off of podcast platforms that you use, like Spotify and Apple. The Intersection. It's easy to find. Watch us on YouTube. Tell your friends about us. Bring them all in. Watch us live record. Everything you can do to help The Intersection. And while you're here on Legal AF, hit the subscribe button for this YouTube channel. Help us continue to grow. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.